Hello, friends, and welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. My name is Scott Cowan, and I'm the host of the show. Each episode, I have a conversation with an interesting guest who is living in or from Washington State. These are casual conversations with real and interesting people. I think you're going to like the show. So let's jump right in with today's guest. All right, welcome back to this episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast. My guest today is Kris Kaiyala. Kris, did I say it right today?
You did it.
Awesome.
You did it.
All right, cool. First take, folks. First take. Imagine that. Anyway, Kris's bio shows him as a writer, producer, creative director. But we're talking to him tonight primarily about dirt and audio drama. So, Kris, welcome. Thanks for taking some time to sit down.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Let's just jump. Here's the first question for you. Why did you decide to do dirt? What? It doesn't seem to line up with your professional career that I'm aware of. So why dirt?
That's a great question. And on the topic of dirt, let me first wish you a happy Mount St. Helens Day.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Is the time of this recording? Yeah. Was it 43 years ago?
I believe it was.
Yeah. Yep. 43.
43 years ago, I was, I'll get to your question in a moment, but okay. 43 years ago, I was on Fairchild Air Force Base with my parents in the car on the way to an air show, like the annual air show. And there were probably 200 cars in line waiting to get through the gate. And then police cars came zooming the other direction where, of course, there were no cars because we were all trying to get in. They were coming out and with blaring on their loudspeakers. Everybody turn around, go home. So that was my Mount St. Helens Day experience. And in Spokane, within 3 hours of getting back home, it was pitch black in the afternoon and snowing ash. It was a really wild, fascinating day.
So you don't look old enough to have been in a car remembering this. How old were you?
Thank you for saying that. I get that comment a lot. People are surprised to learn that I was actually born in 1970. So
what? Folks, I know this is audio, folks. Honest to God, you look like you're about 35.
Well, I appreciate that. The time of night that my body wants to go to sleep, which is around 8:45 these days, would say otherwise. I've turned the corner clearly into my 50s and ready to go to bed early and get up early.
8:45 is late, man. We can't. 8:45 is late. Oh my God. So yeah. I'm trying to remember. So you were, okay. So Spokane. So I was in the Tacoma Puyallup area then. I was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
And I really don't remember all that much. I remember the aftermath of it, that, ash was everywhere. You shouldn't buy a used car because they were destroyed by the ash. People, there's all sorts of things like that. I remember bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So I went to college the next year. I started college at Central in 1980. And my roommate, who is the guy who is the producer of the show, Todd's parents owned a jewelry store. And like all good entrepreneurs, they found somebody that was making what they named it St. Helenite, which they compressed the ash into glass, and it was this emerald green color, and they were faceting it and selling it. So there was a craft fair at school, and Todd was selling St. Helenite stones and jewelry. It was,
wow. That's ever the entrepreneur.
Ever. Like. So, okay. So back to this. So you're the writer, producer, creative director, which all ties into launching a drama, a podcast. But how did this, how did this come about? What was this like? And maybe tell it to us as best you can from your wife's standpoint. What did she think when you said, "Hey, I want to do this"?
That's a great place to start, because it was in early days of the pandemic. Okay. So, my wife, Sarah, and I were hunkered down here in the house together. And fortunately we get along very well and do quite well together in small spaces and whatnot. So, I just before, lockdown and quarantine and all that stuff that happened, I actually just had started listening to basically, what are called audio dramas or fiction podcasts. And these are, there are hundreds of them that are available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and, all the different platforms. And I listened to one in particular, which I was actually just listening to again last night on my dog walk, walking my dog, called Limetown. And Limetown was produced, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. I'm not even sure where the producers live, but it was a big hit at the time, and it still is a very popular fiction podcast. And it basically was sort of like this pretend NPR format where the host, a woman, is investigating the mysterious events that take place in a town in Tennessee.
Okay.
And the audio engineering, the sound design, the music, the acting, all just come together in this like just beautiful piece of sort of fictionalized documentary magic. And so I binged that season 1 of Limetown. Then I promptly dove right into 5 or 6 other sort of popular at the time audio dramas, and just something clicked. And I was like, I'm at home, I'm working full time, I have all these all the duties of house, keeping the house clean and feeding the animals and all that were still going on, but I'm here. I have maybe more spare time than I would have had before with commuting into the office and whatnot, no longer happening. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to buy a microphone and I'm going to buy a recorder and I'm just going to start playing around. And with Limetown and other shows sort of as my inspiration. So that was sort of like the new toys, play with new toys aspect of it. Additionally, going way back to the 90s, I got a creative writing degree at the University of Washington. And I'd always intended to, write short stories about, just things that interest me. Okay. I love to read short stories. But, you only have so much time in the day when you're working full time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So at the same time that I was like, I'm going to jump in and try this audio thing, I was like, I have like 10 ideas that have been in my head for 10, 15 years. Let's see if I can put a lot of these ideas together and form some sort of longer narrative. Okay. And so those two things just kind of came together at the same time, that the world was sort of turning upside down, and it just seemed like a good time to try something new.
So what'd your wife say?
She said, go for it. She has been by far the most supportive person of this show and of me in general. So I'm very, very grateful to the time that she allows for me to do this. And, it is a nights and weekends endeavor for the most part. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, there's been some time sacrifices that have gone into it, but fortunately she enjoys the show. She actually has a few small parts in the show. Mm-hmm. I refer to her as the co-producer, even though she's not actually, in the weeds and putting the episodes together like I am, but she does some of the marketing materials and just generally gives me a thumbs up, thumbs down on the drafts of the episodes as I produce them and get ready to put them out into the world.
Okay, we're gonna go off on a sidetrack for just a second because I want to make sure I let you know where I'm at in the show, because what I don't want are spoilers. Okay, so if I ask questions, I don't want you to spoil. So I'm currently listening to episode 10. Okay,
well, you've gotten pretty far along.
Yeah, I'm listening to episode 10. So I have questions I want to ask, but I also don't want to know. So I'm going to just ask you to kind of, if you can, if you spoil it, that's okay. But I mean, I'm going to, yeah. So pandemic, get this idea, you buy some toys, you're playing around. How long was it from the idea that, hey, I think I might want to try something here, to starting the actual recording with your actors?
Yeah, I would say it was probably about 5 months.
Okay.
Maybe less than that. Once I had once I had a Zoom recorder, not Zoom, the product we're using to talk to each other, but Zoom is an actual product based in Japan that makes some excellent audio recorders.
I use an H8 when I record these in person.
Outstanding. And I have an H5 that I use. So once I had that, and then a couple of basic microphones that I could plug into it, I was so excited. There was no stopping the train at that point. I was like, this is going to be a lot of fun. So what I didn't have yet was like a script, right? To or a fully fleshed out script anyway, to actually give to somebody and say, here's your part, let's record you. So the time between having the toys and actually sitting down with the first person that I recorded, which was Jeannie Leslie, who plays the part of Kim, Joseph's sister. So you've listened to enough of the show that you know who that character is. And thank you so much again for listening, by the way. So once I had enough of season 1 written that I could sit down with her and say, are you interested in doing this? There was just a lot of sort of busy work of figuring out, does this, sharing the script with some friends and family and saying, does this feel like it could be anything? Are you interested in where this is going? Does it feel compelling? All that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so I got, pretty good feedback there. And then I showed it to Jeannie, who does have some theatrical acting experience in Seattle. And she was like, sign me up. And I was like, all right, let's do this. And I was pretty upfront with Jeannie that I had no idea what I was really doing. This was really learning, the proverbial building the plane while it's in the air. And so experimenting with different microphones, experimenting with how far away the microphone was from, our mouths, and do we act out both of our parts at the same time, or do I just record your voice and do like 10 takes of each line and then build it later? So it was all just sort of like one big beautiful mess to start out with. And fortunately, since then, I have developed more processes and preferred ways of doing things that make it go more efficiently, and hopefully it sounds all right too.
Well, the sound design, everything so far, I mean, thumbs up on my side as a listener. So I'd like to talk about recording then for a second. Are you recording all the parts for one episode at a time? Or are you sitting down with an actor and asking them to read their parts for a season at a time, or something different?
The latter. I'm really trying to be respectful of my actors' time. And by the way, all the actors are friends or coworkers of mine, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 people. So, and with the exception of Jeannie, none of us have any real trained voice acting experience. Okay. So we're just sort of trying our best as we go. Sorry, remind me of the original question.
So you're recording an entire season in a batch with, so you'd sit, let's say I was on your show, you'd sit down with me and say, okay, here's your lines. Let's go through them. And so it might be I might be in episode 1, I might be in episode 5 and episode 8. We're just knocking them all out. You're done with me. Move on to the next talent. Okay.
Yes, that is correct. And I just find that I can get a little more consistent performance that way too, because within that hour or 2 span that we're recording together, myself as the director in that situation and the actor, we're just sort of getting into a good groove, right? And starting to feel the flow. And so yes, it's best in to just get it all done, everything that I have written all at once.
And has that worked well for the actors? Are they, it's like I'm sitting here in my mind going, I don't know. I mean, I've got my imaginary, I've got my script here, my lines, and I'm looking at it, and I don't have anybody to work off of though. Are you reading the other side to help them, or okay? So you're playing all the other parts that they may be interacting with for this to help them get in character.
Yes, that's correct. So, so I may not be like fully acting out the other lines, but certainly reading the lines and giving them the line to bounce off of, right? Okay. And then also, like, I would say not just explaining, but over explaining the scene and the context and what's happened prior and what's happened after. And I'm pretty careful to just give people just their bits. If they ask for more, if they want to know more, I will gladly share it. But it, it's a lot. It can be overwhelming. Like here you go. Here's a 100-page script. Find and that can just rattle somebody pretty quickly. So yeah, it's basically me just sort of giving them that context, and then usually, by the way, the other character that they're interacting with is my character. I play the lead character of Joseph Elo, because the story is so intensely first person. There's not a scene that Joseph, my character, is not in.
Okay.
So
yeah, sure.
usually the other character that they would be interacting with is mine. Anyway, so it works out.
All right. Then, we're gonna talk technical for a little bit here, but we'll try to spare the audience. They might like it, but I could geek out on this. But so you've got all the files, and you're putting it together. What are you using to build this with?
Yeah, so I use Adobe Audition, and it isn't like I went out and shopped around or demoed all the DAWs, as we say, the digital. Right. What does DAW stand for? I suddenly blanked. Anyway, digital audio workstation, I think, is what DAW stands for. And there are a lot out there, right? And so my wife is a graphic designer. She has the entire Adobe Creative Suite. She's already paying for it, and Audition happens to be part of that. And so I was like, hey, you get 2 logins with your subscription, not just 1, but 2. So how about if I am your other login? And so I just, was able to download Audition onto my machine here, start fiddling around, and it has far more than enough things going on than I would ever use. I know that there are things in there that, like, really serious, college trained engineers would use, that are of no use to myself. And so, but it has served me well.
Episodes are about 30 minutes, ish, right? At least so far.
Yeah.
20 to 30. Well, so let's call it 30. How long is it taking you to put one together?
Oh, that's the big question. So I've never done the math. But I can tell you that it is not fast. Yeah, it's not fast, and part of that. But I will caveat it that I enjoy how long it takes. I really am sort of jealously own each aspect of the production of the show. I really love the different hats that I get to wear. But because it's me primarily doing all the different roles, it's also subject to how much time do I have, or how much time is my day job taking up, or are we going to Wenatchee, which is where you live, to visit family, where we happen to have family living in Wenatchee as well, for the weekend. So it's life oftentimes taking over, and certainly more important things than working on a fiction podcast. And so that's a long way of not answering your question. I would say I would say it's anywhere between 3 to 5 weeks per episode.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot of time. I mean, yeah, I know it's not 3 to 5 weeks, 24/7, but 3 to 5 weeks of parsing it out, fitting it in around the jigsaw puzzle of life. Okay.
Yep. And it's, I try to do things in batches, right? So I'll do as much of the recording up front as I can, so that I just have those files ready and waiting when I get to that part of the story. And I'm already creating sound effects, or I'm already, doing other things. And then that way I don't have to pause everything to go out and record that person. I hopefully already have that in the can, and can just grab it and cut up the dialogue and grab the takes that I like the best and slot them in, and hopefully it all fits together.
Okay. So the reason that we're talking about an audio drama, on this a podcast talking about podcasts.
Well, very meta.
Yeah, exactly. Is that the story takes place primarily in Washington State, and your character visits lots of. I really like the places that you're having your character go, because you could have said, we went to Woodinville. Nothing against Woodinville. Nothing. No, don't disrespect anybody. Please don't get mad at me. But this could have taken place on Bainbridge Island. This could have taken place in Seattle. But no, we're going to Wapato. Talk about Toppenish. You're talking about, Aberdeen, Grace Harbor County, PL. I mean, PL? How did you... where are these how did you pull these locations?
Have you been to PL, by the way?
I have. Mm-hmm. I've been to every place that you've named so far.
Oh, I love that. It's not a romantic story, right? Although there is like maybe elements of that, but I wanted it to just be kind of an everyday places kind of a story. And I think, demographically, there's so much going on in this state that people never see on TV or on a postcard, or maybe even read in the Seattle Times or whatever. Right. And so I like the unexpected, out of the way parts of this state very much. And also there's actual real connections to these places for me in real life. My father was born in PL.
Really?
Or I should say his parents, my grandparents, who a lot of my family members have inspired the characters in the podcast. So, but my grandparents lived in PL when my father was born. I think at some bigger town down the street, which was probably just barely bigger, but
maybe Raymond or maybe
yeah, exactly.
Centralia, maybe.
Centralia, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think it actually might have been a hospital in Centralia. I grew up going to the Yakima Valley constantly as a kid. I had relatives who lived in Sunnyside and Grandview, as well as Yakima itself. And so I know all those small towns, throughout the Yakima Valley. Maybe not intimately. I've not lived in any of them, but I've visited them and been through them many, many times in my life, that I feel a strong connection to that part of the state.
I think, to me, that's one of the things that I'm enjoying about the story, is that it's not taking place in a place I know too well. Like, if let's say it's taking place in Tacoma, and you make a reference that I feel is not accurate, I would probably, because I did catch something. I did catch an actual error in your description.
I love it. I love
Grandfather went to college. Graduated from where? In the story. You say he graduated from Central Washington University.
I did say that.
It would not have been Central Washington University at that time. Was
it something college?
It'd be Central Washington College, or it might have been, there was another name for Central, and I think at that period of time it would have been Central Washington College, because it wasn't a university back then. And I'm giving that to you. I'm teasing you because I went to Central, so that's the only reason that I have any connection to that.
I knew you did. I read that.
Yeah. So, and my bio says my freshman year was the best 6 years of my life. So really, how much studying was I doing at Central? No, but the point is, if it was, say, Seattle, Tacoma based, or someplace I knew really well, and you say, oh, we were on, and I'm making this up, we were in Tacoma and we went up in the Space Needle. Oh, come on, man. But you're picking these towns that I've been to, and I have kind of these hazy, like I can't place Wapato. I mean, I can, but I can't. Like, I don't know if I'm thinking when I think about quote unquote downtown Wapato, am I thinking about downtown Toppenish? I don't know. I have to go back there now, and I actually kind of want to.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that the story is taking place, at least so far. I don't know where else it'll go. In these smaller communities, with interesting characters within those smaller communities.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad to hear that. And I mean, for most people, Wapato is just a sign on the freeway, right?
Right.
They don't, you wouldn't know it one town from the next. And I think that's, I try to make my story feel like what I would do driving through there, which is to take that exit and just go see what's down the road a little ways.
Okay.
Just take the time to just go down and explore, have a look around. That's a bit what I want the story to feel like, that you've actually, gotten off the main road and gone down the side road a little bit to see what's happening.
And I'm scrolling through and looking at the cast. I was going to ask a question, and now I can see, because there's one character that I found him highly annoying. Yeah.
Not mine.
Well, I wasn't good. No, Carl.
Yes.
I found Carl to be highly annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I was going to ask you if he shows up in more episodes, and I see that he's gonna come back in a couple. So I'm curious. I don't want to know anything more.
Yeah.
I like what you're doing here. So since I'm on episode 10, where am I at in the story arc? Because that's season 2. Episode 10 is in season 2, and you're on season 3. So have you completed the whole story? And have you maybe not scripted it out, but do you have the whole story concept lined out?
I do, but not to the level of detail that you're hearing currently, right? So I do know generally how it will end.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that there will be, has to be some sort of surprise twist at the end. And I generally know each character's story arc also to get to the end. And like Joseph's story arc has been one of a bit of a downward spiral, and you're sort of starting to sense maybe that's happening where you're at currently. And it doesn't mean that his entire arc is going to end down in the gutter somewhere, but there are more changes and surprises to come, I guess, is what I will say. Okay, and but yeah, it's as the writer, or as a writer, and as someone who's newer to fiction, as I mentioned, I have a creative writing degree, but I never really put it to use until this show. It's been really a wonderful experience, and I had read about this, other writers saying this and experiencing this, that you don't always know what's going to happen. I don't, as a writer, I don't know always what's going to happen, not just at the end, but maybe a page from now, right?
Really?
And as you go, there's just sort of an element of ideas just sort of come up, and you sort of follow that path and see where it leads, right? And it's there's a little bit of there's just a little bit of magic involved in that, and elements of surprise where even I as a writer, like, well, I didn't know that was going to happen, but looks like we're going there. So you just sort of chase that down and follow it and see where it goes.
Okay. Yeah. I have you, for the purposes of the show, did you go to PL to see what it looks like today? Not today, but modern, current times. Have you been touring the state to do this, or are you pulling most of this from the memory, or?
I have been to every spot that the show travels to. I actually went to PL. I guess 3 years ago. My sister and I took my dad there because it had been decades since he had been in that part of the state. Where his own origins. My dad lives over in Spokane, which is where I grew up. And so, so it was kind of a small family field trip that we did that just to go see it. But in the back of my mind, I knew that I would probably use that as a location in the story. So absolutely, there was part of my brain that was sort of taking mental notes and logging the way things looked and how they were, laid out and stuff. And then, of course, we have so much technology at our disposal these days. You can't, you can see just about anything on Google Street View and to remind yourself of of what you saw. But no, I don't think there's any location that the story has or will go to that I don't actually personally know or have experienced myself.
So I'm trying to pick my questions carefully. Like, once again, I don't want to know too much, but will it go beyond season 3?
Yeah, it will. I've written to the end of season 3, and I'm currently working on the last 2.5 episodes of season 3. And but I know the story will wrap up in one more season. So there'll be
4 seasons then.
4 seasons, yeah.
4 seasons,
and probably 6 to 7 more chapters in season 4, and then that'll do it. And hey, maybe I'll go George Lucas and decide to prequel this puppy. I have no idea. No, I probably won't. I've enjoyed the story. And one thing I like about, I've enjoyed writing the story. And one thing that I like about it is how it bounces around in time. Mm-hmm. Although, as you hopefully have noticed, it's the story itself is very much in the present, right?
Yes.
So it bounces around in time based on stories that Joseph is reading about, mostly about his grandfather's life stories, that he wrote. But I could see that there are ways to maybe expand the story beyond what's happening exclusively in the 2020s, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. When you packaged up the first episode, I'm just going to assume that you completed episode 1 first. Okay. Yeah. You might have been working on the rest of season 1, but chapter 1 completed it first.
Yes.
What was the initial reaction of your people that you shared it with, them? Your close, I'm going to guess you share with friends and family, inner circle type folks. What was the initial reaction, and were you nervous to share it?
Yeah, great questions. I was nervous to share it. And you're, excuse me, and you're right. Inner circle. I do have an inner circle of family and close friends who are, I call them my listening group, and so they get first crack at the episodes before I publish them, just in case there's anything that is really going wrong that I need to address.
And has there been any feedback? They're like, whoa, wait a second here, pump the brakes. Let's talk about this.
I haven't gotten any pump the brakes feedback, but I have, especially in those early episodes. They're I would say that the acting has progressed. Mm-hmm. The acting has progressed from those early few episodes to what's happening. Certainly, I think what's happening in season 2, where you're at, and then definitely, I think with season 3, the game has sort of stepped up. So you have that to hopefully look forward to. Feel free to let me know if you disagree as you go.
I will. I'll let you know.
Yeah. And, I think if there's been one consistent piece of feedback from my inner circle, as well as, just regular people out there listening to the show, critiques, is just that the acting is maybe just a little bit rough, a little bit sort of like reading from the script, mm-hmm. Early on. And that's literally because we're all, it's basically like the learning curve is exposed, is mm-hmm. unfortunately is out there to hear in some places. But I'm aware of it, and it's been a good learning experience. And I think that the show is better for it, for some of the shortcomings early on.
And I don't want to, I'm not a critic. I'm critical of people, but I'm not a critic. So but I agree. The first handful of episodes, I was just like, I like this, but there's just something, and I just couldn't quite, it's like a very small pebble in your shoe. It's just, I can keep walking, but I just don't quite. And season 2 has been, progressed is a good word. Okay. I don't want to say it's better. I don't mean it like that, but I think it's progressed. I think maybe the actors are more comfortable with the characters, maybe. And, maybe that's it. So I enjoy it. So, all right. So you kind of released it to your listening group, Did you, when you launched chapter 1, were you in a podcast network at that time, or did you release it as an independent?
I was not in a Dirt was not in a podcast network.
Okay.
That was certainly the dream and the goal, because I knew that they existed and were out there. But no, there was none of that at the start. And, I think that first week that the first episode was out, actually, I think I launched episodes 1 and 2 together. Mm-hmm. So this would be going back to the fall of 2020. And I think it maybe had 50 downloads, the first few weeks, and simply because it was brand new and I had no connections, there was no marketing of any kind behind it. Okay. And it was just purely, let's just put it out there first and then try to get the recognition second. And so it took a little while to get that going.
What company did you use to host it when you initially launched? Who were you using?
It's a host called Libsyn. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you've heard of them.
I heard it. Yeah, I think probably at the time they were probably the largest thing out there as far as number of shows on there, because they've been around for a long, long time. So were you, because this is me, were you kind of obsessively refreshing the screen to see downloads?
Yeah, I would say I was. And I think there are, I'm certainly not the first and only person who's tried their hand at this. There I since have, in the audio drama space specifically, I since have learned that there are hundreds of people like me who are just having fun and doing this as a hobby to various degrees of serious effort or just for fun. And, but I think a lot of us, all had that same experience of launching as essentially a nobody, right? Just purely as an independent effort, and just on the daily, maybe several times a day, just like, is anyone listening? Is anyone out there? Refreshing, click, looking at the stats, and then suddenly you get your first. There were 100 downloads today, and you're going crazy, on top of the world, and it's so great. And you go through all those various stages as the show.
And the next day is 50, and you're like you're like, I don't want to say you're just miserable. You're beside yourself. It's over. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so you launched it. I'll say you self-published it using Libsyn. Okay. Yeah. When did the network? How did you? And you said downloads were low to start with because what flipped the switch? Because currently what are you averaging on an episode download now?
I don't think of it necessarily in terms of per episode, but it's around 40 to 50,000 per month of downloads per month now.
Okay. So that's a great number to have. So you went from 100 a day, which would be, let's do the math. It'd be 3,000 episodes. You've 10 to 20x this thing. How? What happened? What did you get? Was it written up somewhere? Or was it multiple things? But how did you go from anonymity to this well-known show?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, a lot of it was just grassroots, mostly on my part, also on some family members' parts, marketing, and just, sending the link out to, friends, putting it up on Instagram and Facebook for all of my, friends and colleagues to see on there. Couple of well-placed LinkedIn posts early on too, which,
really?
I have, unfortunately I have a pretty good network on LinkedIn because of the decades that I've worked in the tech ad world,
right?
And so Yeah. I mean, it wasn't my day job, but I thought, well, I'm just going to treat this like a job, and why not post it there instead of just instead of simply as a hobby
Right.
on, Instagram or whatever to just friends and family. So that helped a lot. Other shows like mine, and I don't mean like in the story sense, but in the genre or the level of popularity sense, the indie sense, making connections there, and sharing each other's episodes in our podcast feeds. That helped. That's a tactic that really helps. And when I did join the network, Fable and Folly Network, by the way, is the name of the network that Dirt is a part of. One of the first things that they said was, you want your show to grow, do feed swaps, do episode swaps on other shows in the network, other shows who are in our network, put it on their feeds as well, and you'll just see things, you'll just see numbers like you've never seen before. And they were right. That was definitely an excellent tactic as well. But that came later on. So early on, when it was the slower growth and trying to get the attention of the podcast network, it was really just a matter of making personal connections with other creators. Twitter is a big space for audio drama and fiction podcasting. So getting connected with that community that was already there. I think maybe a lot of them have actually left Twitter since our old pal Elon got involved, but it still is a pretty active community of people who enjoy not just creators of the shows, but people who enjoy this type of entertainment, and are sort of just that are very vocally and in a very positive sense, promoting it to their friends as well.
Right. That's great. I think that's awesome. And so the network, did you approach them or did they approach you?
I approached the network. I know that they had heard the show and heard of the show. And I sort of was kind of waiting and picking my moment, I guess. And it was right after I launched all of the season 2 episodes, which I was able to at that time. I was able to do like 1 week at a time, but all of them 1 week in a row. Like I had them all in the can. So I was able to just like, just like get them all out there. And I think that also kind of caught a lot of people's attention because they realized they could now binge, this show. And so it was right after, or a few weeks after I had gotten the last of the season 2 episodes out there, that I reached out to the Fable and Folly Network and said, okay, I've got 2 seasons in the can. They're out there. I have a little bit of a loyal audience. If you like the show, I would really love to join the network and see if together we can turn this into something more and bigger. And I would say that it has been, it is, success is defined in various terms, like, is it as popular as Friends on TV? Like, no. Will it ever be? No. But is it doing well compared, in its genre, in its in its sort of expected space? And I would say that it has gotten there. I'm pleased.
I'm gonna look something up in real time here. Are you familiar with the website Listen Notes?
No, I'm not.
So Listen Notes is a podcast search engine. And I'm looking up your show. Okay.
Let's see what you get.
You, according to them, you are in the global rank, the top 1% of all podcasts.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for doing that just now. And okay. Guess my work here is done.
I would advise you go in and claim your show. Because
I will.
You can go and claim.
Listen Notes. Gotcha.
Listen Notes. Yeah.
I will do that. And I am generally aware that the vast majority of podcasts, whether it's a fiction or a drama genre like what I'm doing, or more of an interview series like what you do, or obviously there's like a whole span of different types of podcasts that most of them a lot of them fizzle out after a few episodes, or people just give it a try and they let it decide that it's not for them or whatever. And so there is sort of just that tier that exists of basic attempt at it, right? And so I think for people who can stick with it and grow a little bit of an audience, it can be a really fun, gratifying thing.
Yeah. And like for our show, so I know my numbers, I know your numbers, we're quote unquote in the top 5%, and we're not close to your numbers. So now, if I'm being honest with you, you're in the top 1%, but Joe Rogan is way up there.
Oh yeah.
Downloads. I mean, what's his download numbers are just ridiculous. So anyway, but but here's the thing: you have accomplished something. You are accomplishing something. You are telling a story. You are entertaining and engaging people that don't know you in an audio format that is popular, but it's not Netflix.
Right.
You have to work a little bit harder to listen to a podcast than you do if you're going to sit down and watch Netflix. So I think this is awesome. Now, I don't want to talk about your show really anymore, because my goal here is I want people to listen to your show. I do. I'm enjoying it. At the time we're recording this, like I said, I'm only on episode 10. I don't see any reason that I won't keep enjoying it. So, but I haven't finished it, folks.
Okay. Carl is coming back.
Yeah.
Just give him a chance. And
Really?
there's a little bit of Mississippi twang in Carl that I know the actor Aaron is from Mississippi, so we tried to turn that into more of a country accent.
Yeah, but Carl's a little creepy to me. His actions are a little aggressive, and yeah.
Well, he's
kind of that's not a complaint. That's not like I'm not saying right. Scott says write Carl out. No, I'm just saying this is one of those characters that I'm like, is this guy could be bad news here. Somehow this guy's gonna get involved in something that might not go well.
Could be. And I think I wrote Carl to be sort of the anti Joseph, who's very in many ways sort of protective of his privacy and maybe hides his feelings, or maybe has ulterior motives at times, whereas Carl is somebody who is everything he does is just sort of out on the surface. He overshares, right?
Yeah.
And but I will say that of all the characters people have written to me about, Carl is high on the list.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
all right.
A lot of Carl fans out there.
Okay.
You might become one. Who knows?
I might.
You might.
So I'm looking kind of at your resume, and somehow I ended up on your wife's resume site too. So that sounds kind of stalkerish, and I don't mean it that way, but question. So I see you went to the University of Washington. You got a Bachelor of Arts in Creative Writing.
Yes.
But your wife went to WSU.
That's
so you're one of those households.
Can I tell you more? Can I take it even farther down that road?
Go right ahead.
Okay. So you're probably aware of the rivalry between the Washington Huskies and the Oregon Ducks.
Yes.
My wife's family, almost all of them went to University of Oregon. And my dad has a degree from Oregon State University, and my daughter is currently going to school there. So, so we have all four Northwest schools represented. So you've got the
Apple Cup and the Civil War
family.
Yeah,
got them all. We've got them all. Yeah. So I mean, I grew up in the Spokane Valley. My dad for decades has been a rabid Coug fan, Cougar football in particular, even though he personally didn't attend the school. I would say that Sarah, my wife, is more Washington Husky than she is WSU Cougars. That's where she got her degree from. But
where did she grow up?
In Mukilteo. So
so it's interesting. So you grew up on the east side, you came to the west. She grew up on the west and went to the east.
She was there only briefly.
Okay.
But yes.
Yep. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So we got the whole state covered.
Yeah, you do. So your career, did some intern stuff at Alaska Airlines. How does one end up? Are you a ski buff? Snowboard skiing, is that your thing?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I grew up skiing at Mount Spokane and 49 degrees north. For anyone listening who knows those areas, since age 4.
Okay. Jackson Hole, Wyoming is some pretty good skiing.
Jackson Hole, Wyoming is good skiing, and I lived there for a year right after college. Yeah, there are so many places in the Western U.S. that are just, outstanding, and I've been to many of them on road trips or vacations or visiting, friends who've lived in various places. But I always come back to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
This place is in my bones, and that it goes back 3 generations for me, and it's hard to fathom being a resident anywhere. I have lived in other parts of the country actually, but it would be hard to not keep my roots here, that's for sure. So
what's a typical day look like for you in the career?
Well, my job for the last 3 years has been fully remote. I work in the tech sort of advertising world, and so just as you and I, our audience can't see us right now, but we're looking at each other in full HD on our laptops, and so that's my day, is really just working at home in various video calls and meetings, and the job I was at until just about a month ago, where I was at for a good number of years, still has a physical office in downtown Seattle, although it's a much smaller office now than it used to be. They gave up a lot of the square footage. So, I work with a lot of creative people in the advertising industry, and being together in a room, that's the way it was done forever, like, not to draw on that tired cliche of Mad Men, but if you watch the show, you've got 4 or 5 people in a room, they're batting ideas around, writers, designers, art directors, etc. And that's the norm in my industry, but that was all upended a few years ago, and we all went remote, and we had to do that kind of stuff like this instead. A little awkward at first, but figured it out to the point where very few people actually want to go back to work in the office. And we're very fortunate, we're very privileged, and that we don't have to physically go into work if we don't want to. I know a lot of people have to do that, and have had to throughout a lot of the crazy stuff that's happened in the last few years. But
so do you like working remotely? Does it work for you? Okay.
It does. I do very much. It's I enjoy the routine that I have of working at home. It's I do not miss getting up early, taking the shower, driving into the office, spending 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever number of hours there, and then driving back, leaving my dog, or leaving our dog here for 7, 8 hours at a time. And even though we would come home and he would have to go to the bathroom really badly, he would still give us that warm greeting. He still loved us despite us leaving him alone for so long. But now he has us here all day long, and he can just walk up and ask for a pet anytime he wants to. So I love it. I do. I really enjoy the remote aspect of work these days.
My dog is currently he's spending more time in his condo without his humans around. but my guy's a little bigger than your dog. So, he knocked me over today when I got home and let him out. He hit me so hard he knocked me over. It's like,
Wow.
But super happy, super exuberant, but he likes it when I'm in the office and he can lay down and sit at my feet and just, bark in the middle of a recording.
Yeah.
So I can't remember your answer when I asked you this in the pre-interview. So I'm hoping, well, it doesn't matter. Do you drink coffee?
I absolutely do drink coffee.
Okay. Where's a great place to get coffee around you?
Well, it's a local chain, here in Seattle, but it's Cafe Ladro.
Cafe Ladro. Okay. Yep.
So they've got a few,
been around
locations.
a long time.
Been around a long time.
Good coffee.
Really good coffee. Just whatever they're doing, the way that they roast the coffee, it just has kind of a nice, I don't know, nutty taste to it. I'm not much of a tasting notes person, I have to say, even though I do enjoy a glass of red wine from time to time. But there's just something about the Cafe Ladro coffee that is good, and they have great, they have really good kind of open spaces to sit in with the laptop and do a little bit of writing if you need to also.
So what's your coffee drink of choice?
I try not to do too much of the dairy, so not a latte. It pretty much just like an Americano, like a medium or dark roast Americano with a splash of 2% milk. We'll do it just fine.
So if I'm coming over to your area of the world, where's a great place to grab lunch?
There's a lot of great places over here in Seattle. One spot, or it actually has the word spot in its name. It's the 5 Spot.
Oh yeah.
Which is up on Queen Anne.
Yeah. I haven't been there in years. Jeez. Okay. That's a good one.
It is still around.
Yeah.
Although it was, they did close for maybe 18 months or so. And I think there was a little bit of worry that they might not reopen and come back, but great breakfast and lunch.
Yeah.
Great breakfast and lunch spot. The BLT there with the thick fries is a good way to go.
All right. Yeah, no, so in all your copious free time, because you don't have to commute, you've got a job, your wife has a career too. You both have careers. You have a dog.
Yeah.
You're recording a podcast series. What do you guys like to do for fun? Where's the dog want to go for a walk?
Well, the dog, it's interesting you say that because he's probably at the top of the stairs right now, looking down, wondering
what's going on.
What. Yeah, like it's time, buddy. Literally, our dog asks for, I don't know how many times you take your dog for a walk a day, Scott, probably a lot. Our dog will just lay around like a cat and sleep all day long until right after dinner, 6:30, 7 o'clock, almost always on the nose. And he will just walk up and he will just stare at me. And there's no getting out of it. There's no getting out of it. And I know immediately and exactly what it means because it's our routine. And so we just we actually don't really go anywhere for the dog walk. It's right around the neighborhood here.
Okay.
And so he knows the streets. He knows every street within 6 blocks of the house, and oftentimes likes to tell me which street he would like to walk down tonight or up, as the case may be. Yeah.
Okay. We could go on and on and on, but because the dog will need your attention shortly and to keep it, within the navigational beacons, we'll wrap it up. I got a couple last questions. Number one, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
Oh, you're gonna stump me here at the very end. I think maybe ask me, if we have time, the significance of the story going to Mary Hill State Park.
Okay.
Do you know this part of the state?
You are currently there. So this may be a spoiler alert, but go ahead. What's the significance?
It's not a spoiler. It won't be a story spoiler.
Okay.
But it is I grew up in Spokane, as I mentioned a few times, and then we had family in Seattle. We had family in Portland, we had family in Yakima.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary Hills State Park on the Columbia River always served as a central meeting spot for family reunions, almost annual family reunions. And so it just, for nostalgic reasons, I decided to, write it into the story and have it be a, serve, just kind of be a place where something is found and discovered. And it also,
just where I'm at is I'm in the episode. I'm right. You found something. That's right where I'm at and what I was listening to before we jumped on. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. So it also happens to be where my real grandfather's memorial was, just as Joseph's grandfather had his memorial there. And so it's just again, getting back to your questions earlier, I think the locations in the story all have personal connections, family or personal connections, in some cases, deep connections of some kind or another, which I think for me has made the story just that much more fun to write. So,
all right. Couple last things. I'm throwing this one at you, and I understand it's a curveball, and when Dirt is completed, you think you got another story in you?
Yeah, I think I do. Well, I don't know if it'll be another audio story or something else.
Okay.
So time will tell. I really enjoy audio production. I definitely see myself still doing it to some degree afterward, but I don't know what that would be. But yes, I do think that there is more storytelling of some kind, though.
So I wrote a note before we went live, and I haven't asked the question. Studio 5705. What's the meaning?
5705 is the street address of the house I grew up in.
Okay.
And we talk in the creative ad world, we talk about sandboxes, like playing in the sandbox in terms of coming up with ideas or how can we just ideating, creative idea generation. And for the first maybe 5 years that we lived in this house that my parents built up in the hills in the Spokane Valley, my two sisters and I were age 10 or less. My parents decided to forego any formal landscaping and just had 2 dump trucks come and dump 2 big piles of sand in the front yard. And that's all we did almost every day in the summer, was just go outside and dig tunnels. And there are untold buried toys in that front yard for whoever lives there now. They could unearth them and maybe be a little puzzled why, of what they're finding there. But
they need a metal detector.
They might need a metal detector. Who knows what they'd find? So anyway, I just thought, like, I was kind of struggling, like, I could go with something kind of artisan sounding or, whatever. And I was like, nah, I just couldn't come up with the right name. So I was like, well, I love that house I grew up in. And I have so many great memories, and it served as I had a very sort of free and creative childhood. I feel very fortunate that I had that, which I think is part of what informs me wanting to do things like this today. So I just was like, okay,
cool.
I'll take the Studio 5705.
All right. So the last question I have of you.
Okay.
Cake or pie, and why?
Okay. Well, my wife would say cake for sure. She would eat cake 3 times a day if she could. But for me, I'd have to say pie, apple pie specifically, which probably, probably sounds kind of generic and vanilla.
No,
but,
it just sounds Washingtonian, Frank. Come on, all the apples here.
So there's an apple pie competition amongst myself and my siblings and my father every year. And each of us claims that we make the best apple pie. Okay. My sister gave me a pie dish for Christmas one year that in cursive writing says second best apple pie that I faithfully use for every apple pie that I make and feed the family. And I'll tell you, Scott, they love it. And I think it's I do think it's the number one apple pie in the family.
All
so
right.
between you and me,
Okay.
no one else has to know that.
No, we'll keep that down. Okay. So last thing is where can people find out more about Dirt? Where do you want them to go? What should they, where should people go?
Well, let me just say again, thanks for doing this. This is so awesome. And thank you to anybody who's lasted this long to the end, listening to all this. And the best place to visit to learn more about the show would be the show's website. It's dirtaudiodrama.com. It's has all the episodes there, but also has some background information that goes into a little bit more detail about sort of family inspiration and some of the locations.
Great photography.
Thank you. There's a photo of the there's a photo of the actual metal detector that I use for the Foley sounds, which is very similar to the metal detector that my real grandfather used. So that was, again, some story inspiration there. So if you want to learn more about the show and sort of a little bit of behind the scenes stuff, that's the place to go. And follow the show on Twitter, just because that's where most of the updates happen. So that's Dirt Audio Drama on Twitter.
Okay. Kris, thanks for doing this. This is great. Keep up the show. I really am enjoying it. I've shared it with some of my friends. Oh, I do have a question. I don't have to record this. We're going to record anyway. Have you listened to Ghost Herd?
No, I have not.
So Ghost Herd is a documentary about a family in the Pasco area who the patriarch of the family created a fake herd of cattle and got away with about $250 million and bankrupted his family. And this is a true story. This is an NPR show done and written and told by a journalist in the Pasco area. Your show, not similar at all, but there's just something about this rural Washington thing, right? And that show has it touches on it, and your show touches on it, and it's interesting. But it was I think a 6-episode series called Ghost Herd. And anyway, that just popped in my brain. Like I warned you, we go down rabbit holes here. So
I love it. Thank you for the recommendation. I will check it out. I love stories like that.
Yeah, and it's not a happy story. It's really not a happy story. It's really quite tragic. Anyway, thanks so much for being on the show. Really enjoyed this. Looking forward to continuing listening. I will get back to you. And the problem with shows like yours, and like this is the same thing with the Netflix show, when you binge and you get caught up, then you got to wait. And that's the, but that's, anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Scott. Much appreciated. And I hope we can talk again soon.
I hope so. Hope you enjoyed the show. You can reach me on Twitter at ExploreWaState. I'd love to hear your comments. You can also visit our website at explorewashingtonstate.com. If you know anyone who would like the show, it'd be amazing if you'd share the show with them. This is the biggest way that we grow this show. Good old word of mouth. Glad you were here with me today, and I hope to have you listening to the next episode. See you then.